Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barban. Let's talk football.
Talking the Rams and the Eagles.
Another snow game.
Another snow game. Divisional round here. Eagles obviously are battle hardened in the snow, but surprisingly, the Rams played really good in the snow too.
Yeah, Stafford looked, not used to seeing him with any snow on the helmet and red nose, things like that. You can
the whole 9 yards, yeah.
Yeah. So but no, it didn't seem to. I doesn't feel like you can tell when people are running around, they're a little more ginger than usual, right?
Mm.
Like in terms of changing direction and things like that. And I didn't really, but I think it affected both teams equally. So it didn't really feel like one was. It didn't negatively affect the Rams significantly more than the Eagles.
No, I think the media overblows they're not a cold weather team. Like, get out of here.
I don't think Eagles play in the snow that often either. Like, it's not.
None of these teams play in the snow that often, no matter where they are, until the very, very end of the season. You might catch 3 or 4 snow games total in the whole league. So, and cold, yes, but snow itself is pretty rare nowadays. And any of these cities.
The fumbles were bad. There's a lot of fumbles for both teams, but both teams, that's so.
Well, the Eagles didn't have any turnovers, but you mean just dropping the ball?
Yeah, right. Because technically on their box score, there's 2 fumbles. Now they didn't lose any.
They recovered, but ball security and just handling the ball is always going to be a problem. Partly because your hands, no matter how much you do with the hand warming, your hands are just cold.
Yes, and the ball feels differently too when it's not.
I guess they do their best to try to keep them warm, but any amount of use is eventually. I mean, it's just too damn cold out there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And slick. Okay, so do you have any initial notes or thoughts on this game?
No, my initial thing was Eagles keep doing the Eagles thing. They're just like the Chiefs, like the passing game looks limited. Mm-hmm. I don't fully understand why. And Barkley's a monster, but with the great defense and a good running game, that is the recipe to win in the NFL. So, it's not 15 for 20 for 128 yards, and he got sacked 7 times. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and so for minus 63 yards. Yeah. So his actual passing, because in the NFL they count that as against passing yards. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, I don't either.
College, it's against running yards, but again, here we go with the weak passing offense. But man, what did they run for? 280 yards?
Yeah, 285 yards, and it really never felt like they had a really good boa constrictor going in like the end of the second quarter, the whole third quarter. Do you know what I mean? Like it never. This was a 6-point game, but it never felt that close like for most of the game. So the Eagles really controlled it. And any turnovers that do happen, the Rams were killed by those. So they had just 2 turnovers to 0. And that was the main thing between when the other team turns it over more and you're better, have a good defense that control the ball in the run, that was.
And I also have a note here. Each team only got 3 penalties. So super clean game. Maybe I think this is also part of the snow. It seems as though it's hard for defenders to even get close to the receivers for too many pass interference type penalties to show up because the footing's so awful. Everyone's just trying to keep up with each other. You can't get too handsy when the weather's this bad.
No, and that's a good point. And you're right about the staying up, right? Because that was something we talked about on an earlier show. When a defensive back fell down, it's an absolute disaster because it's the
disaster.
You cannot catch up. The person is wide open. It's so obvious they're wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So you can absolutely not fall down if you're a defender, right? So and when the footing's that bad, then they have to work extra hard at not doing that. So
All right. So I have a note here. So I have to go back to the previous Eagles game against the Packers because a note came up before we get into this game. Oren Burks for the helmet-to-helmet hit got fined on the kick, on the opening kick that resulted in a turnover that resulted in a quick Eagles touchdown.
Yep.
And do you remember during our post-game commentary, I said, isn't that a targeting? I mean, he hit him right in the face with the crown of his helmet.
Yep.
And Brady's like, oh, it's just a clean hit. And maybe Brady's thinking back to when he played, that's a clean hit, but nowadays that
Yeah,
gets
that's a
that,
good
well,
point.
because he could get
Yeah,
hit like
good.
that at
He
least the
did.
first half of his career, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And so I said it to you. I was like, I don't know what targeting is anymore, because he went
Nope.
right through his face,
Mhm.
and then he gets fined for it, but then he didn't get called.
No, it's ridiculous. And that's what we were talking about also in the last show, is that how subjective it is, right?
Yeah.
Because when you bring refs on and you say, and the one in the broadcast booth is like, oh no, that's not a penalty. And then they go in the field, they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
penalty conferred. Like, that's a disaster. So
Yeah.
like, it's something has to be done. There was one of our comments with one of our listeners said that like all those things, like most penalties should be reviewed, which would just drag the game down to a glacial pace, like especially in some of those games where they're like 5 to 10 penalties a team. So that's like 15 to 20 penalties each that there's a review, in addition to the, did he catch it? Did he go to bounds? Was his foot in bounds? Like,
Well, I
that'd be
think,
too many reviews.
yeah, but I think if they kind of tightened up what they called a penalty and not a penalty, and they could decide it, let me say it the other way around. For the sake of keeping the game going quickly, you just let penalties that aren't penalties go, or miss penalties that should have been penalties. So that's like kind of stupid way to view it. Well, let's just keep the game going, so we're just not going to call it accurately. That doesn't make any sense either. There's got to be some middle ground. The reviews can't take for goddamn ever, especially when you look on the replay and it's like right there.
Yeah.
So it's put it this way.
I do think sometimes as a fan, like when I'm seeing that replay and you're like, oh yeah, there's the ball moving. And then like next thing you know, I'm sitting there for 5 more minutes and I'm like, I don't know what they're looking at or you know what I mean? Like it's
well, if the original call was so subjective and so quick, just make the replay call just as quick.
That's a good point.
Put a shot clock on the replay.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. You got
put a shot clock on the replay.
10 seconds into,
I mean, you're asking them to make the call in a split second on the field, and then you give them 10 minutes to get out of here, especially when it's going slow motion. There must be something where they're told, like, you've got to really, really, well, we know the conclusive evidence thing to overturn the call you made, but I wonder if they get penalized for too many overturned calls. So that's why they're really, really looking, because they really don't want to overturn something they just did.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense that they're asked to make the call that quickly. Then they can't be asked to make the replay call just as quickly.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Anyways.
So what else did you think about the game?
Overall, my other overarching note. Now, this is my ongoing theme for this season. You guys all know if you've been watching.
Here we go.
The era of the running quarterback is on us, and the era of the statue in the pocket is over, I think. Jared Goff getting beat by Jaden Daniels is one of them. And here we go. Stafford is the last of the remaining pocket QBs that were in the playoffs who just got beat also by a running quarterback.
Interesting. Yeah. And you know what? And this is a good thesis for your, hypothesis, because Stafford didn't have a bad game.
No.
Right? He threw for over 300 yards. He had 2 TDs. He was sacked 5 times, but it wasn't bad. And they had a 100-yard rusher. So like, and a lot of different people had receptions, but it did feel like that was one of the main differences in the game. Obviously the turnovers were probably the big difference, but on a day like that where their offense looked to stall, even though over stats wise he had a good game, there's still like 18 incomplete passes, which is a lot.
Well, and a lot of them on the comeback at the end.
Yes. And so that's where running for a first down, or like when, just once, or like once on the drive or something like that, felt like it really would have made a difference.
How about this? Let's do the thought experiment here. At the end, the Rams were driving to, could win, tie at least. No, win. They could have won, right?
Correct.
Based on the score. If they got a touchdown and an extra point, because they were only down by.
Well, they scored a touchdown at 2 minutes 48 to make it 22-28. And then I think they ended up having the ball after that.
Yes, they did. And and the Eagles finished them off on defense. But imagine that final drive where it got to the point where Stafford had to just keep throwing. They couldn't run it.
Yeah.
Just replace all things being equal, every other player on both teams on the field exactly the same. Replace Stafford with Josh Allen, or replace Stafford with Lamar Jackson. You think they have a better chance at making that comeback? On a couple of those plays where Stafford's only real option is to throw it.
It really feels like that now. Like you said, I think it supports the Barban hypothesis, and that's a great way to, situation to describe, right? In the you got to have it drive having that as an option doesn't mean you have to run all the time. Doesn't mean you have
No,
to. It's not like the college game where they talked about Riley Leonard. In order for them to win, is going to have 15 rushes or something like that.
you're
Was
right,
some of the
right.
things they talked about before the game. It's not that. But it's on the gotta have it drive. Just having that option, getting one first down or something at a time where the defense did everything right, and then you just extend the
That's
drive.
the other thing. Or the defense at that point
Mhm.
is, it has to account for him. You have to
Mhm.
allocate resources to pay attention to him, which might free up some of those receivers a little bit more than how much the Eagles were locking down on those receivers in that last
Mhm.
series. So I don't know. I just think this is where we're headed. It's obviously him and Goff were in those games and put up all kinds of yards, but it clearly didn't matter. And the running quarterback, if I just think back, the quarterbacks on the other side of the field had a couple of big time runs that they just weren't capable. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Hurts went off for a 70 or 60-yard touchdown, like right away.
Yeah.
So, and also when you can pass for 300 yards or run for 300 yards, I think every coach every time is taking the 300 yards running
Always.
100% of the time.
Yep. No, for sure. And it's the Rams, they got off to they looked really bad at one point in the season. They had some injuries. They really struggled. They put it on near the end, which is kind of like, but it just felt like just not enough too late. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's because like all the, Puka Nakua is really good. Cooper
Mhm.
Kupp's good. Demarcus Robinson, I think, is coming around. Like Kyron Williams looked fine. Like Stafford still has a lot of juice left, I think. So it was, they
And
were
that
right there.
defensive
But
line is
yes,
outstanding.
yeah,
Verse, what a
really
freak
good.
show that guy.
Oh yeah,
I have a note here saying Verse has to be defensive rookie of the year. Who's even close to that?
yeah. I don't know, but
He's
he
a
was.
complete freak. I saw a meme pop up that, how they have accelerometers on, they can track how fast they run. Um, Xavier Worthy's fastest run tracked was Verse was faster than that, chasing
Gosh,
somebody
really?
down. Yeah. Can you
Oh
believe that?
no,
That guy,
no.
that he's the last time. When was the last time you saw someone this freaky? I'd say Javon Curse.
Yes, that was going to be my
Yeah.
first thought, because he just is terms of complete. Although Myles Garrett is in that conversation too.
This fast? Oh, well, maybe.
Well, just in terms of complete freak, because he's absolutely huge too. Like
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like the running back for Baltimore,
Henry.
yeah, like he's another, like in that category, like
overly
280 and fast,
overly
and
big fast. Yeah.
yeah, like we're that's a athletic freak,
But I mean,
freak in a good way. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
a complete Verse and Fisk and Young, that line. Oh, the NFC West has a problem now with this line. It's so good.
That's always funny on the broadcast when they're like, he was clocked at like, what was it, like 26 miles an hour or 22 miles
26
an hour?
is insane. 21 in a bit.
It was 21 or 22 miles an hour or something. And I remember thinking, like, at one point, I think the first car I had when I was 16, I don't think went that fast. So I was always like, man, they're running faster than that. So.
Oh man. Anyway, so good for the Rams defensive line to keep them in this game, and good for the Rams for staying in this game in what we would call a hostile environment and lousy conditions. They belonged on that field. And I keep thinking the Rams are this, like, I think they would have been an afterthought for most people at the beginning of the season, but they're here, and they have a lot of pieces still.
Oh yeah, no, not even just at the beginning of the season, like the beginning of this season, meaning like 5 games in, when they were 1-4.
Yeah,
they're completely an afterthought, right? And then, but they just had a really strong second half. They finished 5-1. So it's
that defense not even giving up 10 points in 4 of those games.
It's right. That was So
I think that's a surprise, because after losing Donald and Floyd and a bunch of players they just couldn't afford. Well, Donald retired, but the big trade, they get the Super Bowl. It was like, okay, the money's been outlaid. Now they're in rebuild. And instead, it looks like they reloaded, but boy, did they nail some draft picks on the defensive side to make that work, and Kyron Williams. So that I think they're just got to add a few more pieces and they'll be right back there. It doesn't feel right. It's like, oh, isn't there going to be a changing of the guard? But no, as long as Stafford's healthy, I think they're going to be dangerous moving forward.
And it's and in terms of the Eagles, I think they've got I've been interested to see them play Washington. Obviously, that's going to be a great game. Washington's if we're the goldfish memory, Washington's offense was literally unstoppable last game, and the Eagles really boa constricted the Rams this past game. So I'm really excited to see which way it goes. If Washington can bring them into a bit more of a shootout. We're worried about Eagles pass game keeping up with it, or if Eagles can really boa constrict that.
Do you think the Eagles can keep doing? I mean, I guess so. If you're running for over 250 yards, who cares what the pass game does? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you literally just have to do enough to keep the defense honest, which they are doing. But like that Barkley run late when everyone was still sort of tiptoeing around the snow, and he just looked like he got shot out of a cannon and ran for like it, and he was just running. People looked like they were standing still. Like that. This was the last thing I'll say about the game is that I didn't, I don't want this to be controversial, but I did have this as fleeting thought where like I would have liked to have seen this game not in the snow, like just even at a neutral site or something, just like on a fast turf, just to see what they can do where there's not these crazy fumbles that they don't normally do. And that they don't have to tiptoe around like on defense, So like that, I would have liked to have seen that. I don't know if the outcome would have changed, but like that would have been, I feel like just a bit. I would have liked to have seen that. But I mean, listen, the Eagles earned the home field advantage, and you got Philadelphia in January. That this is why you want to go there. They had just as many fumbles, but they just recovered more of them. So
well, the Eagles had 3 enormous runs, 2 from Barkley and 1 from Hurts, which essentially were the difference in the game, more or less. But the Barkley run, well, I guess Hurts too, but the Barkley runs, they were getting stuffed constantly.
Yes.
And then he just one time they don't get him and he was gone. And then that happened twice. And so my note here was he got 200 yards and 150 of them were on 2 carries.
Yep.
And that is a definition of sticking with it because something will break. And like, it's not like in the Buffalo game where Buffalo didn't have a huge run, but they kept getting like 6 yards, 8 yards. Like they kept doing that sort of thing. But in this game, he was getting a little bit here and there, but the final number of yards he got wasn't because he was doing 5 and 7 and 8, 10-yard runs. It was a couple of yards getting stuffed, a few 5 or 6 getting stuffed, 70 yards touchdown. And it was crazy because there's how many running backs are that dangerous if they break it? There's maybe 5 or 6 maybe that can do this. If that.
That's what makes Barkley and like Henry like so different, because you can contain them for a bit, but not the whole game. And it's either going to be consistently getting 6 to 7 yards, or that both of them at any point are a danger of
they're gone.
So
and it just takes one mistake and they're gone.
Yep.
And at this game, to me, now I'm sure part of that was confounded by the footing and maybe I get to your point. If this was in a neutral site game where the weather wasn't a factor, would both of those runs gone the whole way? I don't know.
Probably not. No,
maybe not.
Not the last one for sure, because that one was really people were couldn't recover from where they were defensively. But no, I'm really listen. Philly had with all that dominating running. They had 350 yards and the Rams had 402. And next week they're going to pay Washington, whose offense is not going to be a problem. Now, again, I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Philly, but that'd be my only concern going forward.
All right. One other item is in my banning the foot first slide. Somewhere really early in the game, Hurts pulls the ball on a read option. He's going around the corner. The defense has him. Has the angle on him. He's not getting anywhere. So he's going down the line of scrimmage. He's running horizontally at this point, and then he just slides. And I'm like, no, you are a runner right now. This was a read option. You're not scrambling out of a pass play. You're a full-on runner. And in the same vein of he's just picking and choosing whenever he feels like to be vulnerable or a hard-nosed running back, he ran for a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
So this is bullshit where quarterbacks can pick when they're going to give themselves up as a full-on runner. This was not a scramble.
Yeah.
It's a read option run play.
Yep.
And he gives himself up when it's convenient, or he goes for it when he wants to. And again, this is just this ongoing theme that quarterbacks have figured out. Oh, I totally can do this now. And no other player on the field does this. Receivers don't do it. Running backs don't do it. Nobody does this where they choose when they want to give themselves up. And again, I don't think it was a penalty, but boy, it's so easy to draw a penalty this way.
Yeah.
Especially because the defenders were right on top of him.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. That's a really good comparison to other players. We should have talked about that earlier, because it's the quarterback. They're trying to protect the quarterback, but they've given them too much power because they can decide if they're all of a sudden going to try and go for a first down or slide at the very last second. And defenders don't know which way they're going to go, and the quarterbacks are allowed to do both. And if you don't go out and tackle them and they dive for a first down, that's going to be bad for you as the defender. Or if you go to stop the quarterback because you're worried about the first down and you hit them when they're sliding, then that's also bad for you because you're going to get a penalty for that. And so they have to change that. And that's a really good point for the comparison to other players. Could you imagine a wide receiver catching the ball, turning, running upfield, and then like sliding, and then the guy hitting them in the face? Like, that'd be ridiculous.
Well, why not?
Right?
It's not like the foot first slide's reserved for the QBs.
No, I know that, but it's just that would be ridiculous. Like if everyone did that, then this rule would be changed like tonight,
right?
Like before the weekend. So
right, but the quarterbacks, and we're not talking about Jared Goff or Stafford or Cousins, who might actually need to preserve themselves because they're getting old, and they just don't run very fast and they're getting old. Whereas you're talking about a guy, a physical specimen of a guy, and he's completely using it to his advantage, and it's within the rules.
Yeah,
I just think the rules are absurd.
Yeah,
and it shouldn't be.
And that's a really good point too about the actual play call, right? Like it's a run
option.
It's a read option, and when you round the corner of the tackle and you're running, it looks
wrong that he can pick and choose when he wants to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
and
it's a good point.
And the more you use it, the more you'll realize the more they'll be like, "Oh, I got to wait a little bit longer. I'm drawing a penalty almost every time." So that part I didn't like.
Yeah.
But other than that, the Eagles' defensive line, that's really good. That's a legitimate line.
Both defensive lines really dictated a lot of this game. There was a lot of sacks. There's a lot of pressure.
Tons of sacks on both sides. Pressure all over the place. Yeah. I wonder if that's also a little bit of an artifact of the snow. Maybe that advantages just the fight down there.
Yeah,
in the
trenches.
But
like you said, there's some monsters on those both sides of the ball. So
is that the two best defensive lines in the NFC?
I mean, I thought the Houston one looked really good.
NFC,
that other
NFC.
Game. Sorry.
I can't really think of somebody who's it's pretty damn good. If you wanted to list them, I think you just saw two of the best right there, if not the two best. I mean, the Packers don't have it. The Commanders don't have a line that looks like that.
They're pretty good. I'm
good, but not like that. I wouldn't put them on that level. So, anyways, Rams are still around. Eagles are on the way.
Yeah, Eagles. They've earned it. They've really perfected the running and the good defense, and they're doing their best impression of Kansas City right now, minus the dynamic passing game, and they've earned it to go the championship.
They really are the NFC version of KC, but can run.
Yeah.
But can really run. And I keep saying it every week. The Eagles upgraded on defense, such a big deal. Like DBs and like at the second and third levels, which was the criticism on them last year, and it just keeps showing up that really solidified them. Like that's not a problem anymore. And I've said this multiple times. I'll say it again. A healthy Hurts is a big deal.
Yep. And
the way he's running, the foot first slide notwithstanding, but the fact that he can go for a 70-yard TD now. Last year he couldn't. Like it was obvious something was wrong all year last year, and it was you're getting half of them. Eagles fans, I know that you still have a distaste for this passing game and think it's going to catch up with you, but do you really think so with that kind of run game? I don't know. It's again, this could be just colored by the snow because the game before it seemed worse because the run game wasn't quite like this. So. I don't know. Maybe it's a little sweaty moving forward, thinking we still can't pass the ball. So at some point that'll catch up with us. I don't know.
Washington would be a good team to compare it to. Their offense is really hitting its stride right now. So
well, here we go. One more game to go to make it to the Super Bowl for the Eagles. All right. Well, that's it for the Eagles-Rams game. Come back to the channel for our review of the Bills-Ravens game. Catch you later.